Hello and welcome to the Explore from Anywhere October 2020 Space Race Challenge. This is one of our first story times for our Space Race Challenge, and this program, Explore from Anywhere, is a partnership between UT-TSU Extension of Dyer County, MacIvers Grant Public Library, Dyer County 4-H, and Discovery Park of America. Hopefully you have found our page on Read Squared and you are going through all of these wonderful activities so you can earn a badge, and one of them is to read the book The Astronaut Who Painted the Moon. This is a true story of Alan Bean, who is an astronaut and an artist. This book was written by Dean Robbins, he's the author, so he wrote the words, and illustrated by Sean Rubin. Sean Rubin drew the picture, so he's the illustrator. It was published by Orchard Books, which is an imprint of Scholastic. And I want to show you first these wonderful end papers. Aren't they beautiful? What does that make you think of? Doesn't that make you think about walking on the moon? Do you see the footsteps? Do you know the footsteps are still supposed to be there? Isn't that wonderful? Would you like to walk on the moon? The true story of Alan Bean. Let's find out what happened with Mr. Alan Bean, who was an astronaut. This says, "My paintings record the beginning of a quest never to end, our journey out among the stars." That was something that Alan Bean said. That's a quote. Can you see right there where it's got what he said in quotation marks, and then underneath it has his name. So that means that that is exactly something that Alan Bean said. And I like it when they start a book that way. Lights flashed, a rocket rumbled. Alan Bean's dream was about to come true. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The rocket roared off the launch pad. Have you ever dreamed of being in a rocket as it roared off the launch pad? Maybe you have the same dream as Alan Bean. Alan shook in his heavy spacesuit. The other astronauts were shaking too. Richard Gordon flipped switches on the control panel. "That's a lovely liftoff," Pete Conrad shouted over the noise. The shaking stopped as the aircraft gained speed. Alan was in outer space. He had trained for so long as an astronaut and a scientist, and soon he would walk on the moon. What do you notice about these astronauts in this picture? Did you know that they're upside down? That's pretty cool. Would you like to walk on the moon like Alan Bean did? Alan gazed out the window, marveling at the shapes and colors of space. The sky turned to black. The earth was a blue and white ball glowing in the darkness. The moon was many, many shades of gray. Its mountains and craters seemed bigger the closer he got. Isn't that a cool picture? I'm going to bring that up close so you can see. Can you imagine being in a rocket and hurtling out through the atmosphere and past it and into space toward the moon, and knowing that you might actually walk on the moon? Wouldn't that be so cool? Alan loved to think about the way things looked. As a boy, he made model airplanes to hang in his room. Green for the wings, red stripes for the tail, yellow stars along the sides. He dreamed of being a brave pilot himself one day. There's his room. Does your room look like that? Do you see Alan Bean as a little boy laying on his bed? Let's look at all of his planes. Look, he created all those planes. Isn't that cool? Have you ever done a model plane or a model car? Have you ever made a model? Alan volunteered for Navy flight training. He learned to take off, soar through the air, and glide in for a smooth landing. Just a picture of his cockpit. And can you see his instructions here? As he's learning how to fly, he's got his little book handy, doesn't he? I think that's pretty cool. The earth looked breathtaking from the cockpit. The white clouds above, the green fields below, the blue all around. Alan wished he could paint what he saw. Have you ever looked out at something and thought, I just want to take a picture of that with my mind? Sometimes it's the fall leaves on the trees, or maybe it's a picture of your mother reading a book or being really quiet in another side of the part, or your dad throwing up your little brother in the air and you think, I just want to hold that picture forever. That's what Alan wanted to do, didn't he, with those pictures of the landscape. He wanted to figure out a way to make that a painting. And do you think he did? Do you think he could make a painting? Would you like to make a painting? He found an art class to teach him about patterns and forms. Alan dabbed his brush on canvas to paint a vase of flowers. His flowers didn't look exactly real, but he didn't want them to. They were brighter and bolder than real ones because he let his imagination take over. So when that happens, when you're an artist and you decide to make something bigger or brighter or bolder than it really is, and let your imagination take over, that's okay, isn't it? It doesn't have to look exactly the same way. That's what's wonderful about art. You can make it look how you want it to look and how it speaks to you, can't you? The painting showed how stunning the flowers looked through Alan's eyes and how they made him feel. That's a more abstract, is what that's called in art. When something doesn't look exactly the way it's supposed to, but it's supposed to make you feel something. The spacecraft flew 240,000 miles in 4 days. The moon was so close, Alan could see valleys and ridges. He and Pete got ready to walk on a new world. Alan strapped on an oxygen pack so he could breathe outside. He stepped through the hatch to the most amazing sight. There he is, about to go out into outer space and walk on the moon, and let's see what that sight was that he saw. Look, I think that's them actually going to the moon. Let's find out what the sight was that he saw. Look at that. Can you imagine looking at the landscape of the moon right in front of you and seeing your shadow on it and seeing the earth and the sky the way that we see the moon in the sky? That must be so amazing. The moon was barren, but also beautiful in its own way. Gray dust as far as he could see, thousands of black craters, hard white sunlight, and everything was perfectly still. Alan and Pete pushed a red, white, and blue American flag into the dust. Sorry, that book keeps opening. I'm trying to close up, doesn't it? There's that moonscape that's so barren and still. And there's Alan and his co-worker putting that flag on the moon. And did you know that flag is still there? Alan puzzled over the strangeness of outer space. He and Pete took dozens of photographs, and they set up scientific experiments to measure the moon's soil and gases. Even in his spacesuit, Alan was much lighter than on Earth. He had fun bouncing around on his tiptoes. He could run and run without getting tired. His boots made deep marks where no one had stepped before. Alan was super strong in the moon's gravity. He threw a rock and watched it go up, 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 up. Would it ever come down again? And there's Alan, with the stars reflected in his mask and his footsteps in the dust behind him. And there he is jumping in the air, and there he is throwing that rock, and I wonder if it ever did come down. Can you imagine being so strong you could throw a rock and it would just go up and up and up and up? The three astronauts zoomed back to Earth at 25,000 miles an hour. They splashed into the Pacific Ocean to end their awesome adventure. Alan's friends asked him about his time in space. What was it like up there? He tried to explain about the moon's barren beauty, but words weren't enough, and his photographs just showed a grim and gloomy place. There was so much more to the moon than that, so much magic and mystery. How could Alan share his story so that others would understand? How do you think that Alan could share his story? There he is, splashing down in the water. And there's a picture of what he remembers. It's beautiful, isn't it? But when you see pictures of the moon, it does look barren, doesn't it? Just gray and black and white, and it's hard to really see what it would really look like from the picture, what it would feel like. He pulled out his paints and brushes. Alan knew he was the only artist to ever leave Earth, the only artist ever to see the moon up close. Maybe a painting could show how it felt to be in outer space. Do you think a painting can help you feel what it would feel like to be in outer space? Alan began his work like a scientist. He built a model of the moon's surface and used an electric light as the sun. The model helped him paint the angles and shadows just right. Alan did that before, didn't he? When he wanted to be a pilot, he built the airplanes when he was little. He was very precise about how he built them so that they would hang from his ceiling just right. So when he decided to paint, do you see that landscape of the moon? Do you see how it's on a table and it's small, and there he is looking at the shadows so that he can paint them on his painting. Then Alan let his imagination take over. He added red and purple to the gray dust, blue and green to the black craters, yellow and orange to the white sunlight. The moon didn't look exactly real, but Alan didn't want it to. The painting showed how stunning outer space looked through his eyes and how it made him feel. Look at those pictures. I like those pictures. Do you like them? They're more colorful than the photographs that we saw. How do they make you feel? He hoped others would feel the same thing, the wonder of walking on a new world. Can you imagine stepping onto a surface that nobody's ever stepped on before, and your footprints are going to stay there forever? It's so amazing. Alan liked his moon painting so much he did another one, and another one, and another one after that. He mixed even brighter, bolder colors on his palette. Could he add real pieces of outer space to his paintings? Alan tried stamping on them with astronaut boots. He scratched them with the tools that he had used on the moon. He sprinkled dust from his spacesuit onto the wet paint, and the surfaces grew as rough and rugged as the moon itself. Look at that. So there's some of his paintings, and do you see the footprints in the paintings? Not only on the moon's surface, but he left his footprints on his paintings. Isn't that neat? In a minute, they're going to show you some pictures of some of his paintings. A museum displayed Alan's paintings for everybody to see. Other astronauts came to remember their own awesome adventures in space. Boys and girls came too. They marveled at the shapes and the colors, and they felt the wonder of walking on a new world. Some dreamed of being brave astronauts themselves one day. Others dreamed of being great artists. And some dreamed of being both. It's not either or, is it? You can do anything you want. A lot of times people think that people who are scientists aren't really artistic. But I love that Alan Bean was both a scientist and an artist. So he loved both parts of that. Loved the very logical side of his brain and the very artistic side of his brain. Let's see what we've got here. And then here we have a picture of Alan Bean when he was painting. That is the real astronaut who painted on the moon, or painted the moon. And then there are some of the pictures of him. Here is the picture and there is the painting. Can you tell the difference? How do those paintings make you feel? And then there it has a timeline of when all those things happened. I like it when a book has a timeline. It'll tell you kind of how things happened in order. Because this is a nonfiction book. It tells you the true story of something that happened. And then they show you the cover of the book that we said we would talk about again. So there's an easel on the moon. Did Alan Bean put an easel on the moon and paint his picture while he was up there? He didn't, did he? They kind of made that look a little different on the cover, didn't they? But that's not really what happened. He came home and then he painted what he remembered, and he shared that story with us through paintings. And I think that that's a really neat little twist on the picture, and then to remind you that that's not the way it happens. Sometimes you need to look at things and see if this is just to get your attention or if it's the true thing, isn't it? And it's kind of cool to do that with a nonfiction book. I love the story of Alan Bean, and this is one of my very favorite space books we have here at MacIver's Grant Public Library, because I love how he embraced all the sides of everything he wanted to do. He wanted to go to the moon and walk on it. He wanted to be a pilot. He embraced those things, and he did it. And you can do it too, can't you? When he got home, he didn't say, "Oh my gosh, I walked on the moon, I'm done." No, he just went into his next challenge, his next dream, and he made it happen. And he became an artist that had hung his work in an exhibit. Could you become an artist? I bet you could. I bet you already are. Why don't you paint us a picture today about what you think your greatest adventure will be? Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.